Hello there, and thank you guys for coming. We're really excited to have you. It is a full house tonight, which is really exciting. We had so many people sign up, so it's really great that you all got here early because a lot of people weren't able to make it in. So thank you for joining us. We are very excited to do the Insider's Guide to Ivy League Admissions and to share a lot of our advice with you. Just so you know, we are going to be, we have set up a hashtag for Twitter, which is something that's new to me. So if at any point you feel like you have something that you want to share, you want to invite people, you want people to be able to hear maybe a tidbit of something that Sarge and I spoke about, feel free to use the hashtag Ivy League Insiders. And we will also be live tweeting throughout the event as well. So you can always come back if you don't take notes and catch some things there. So let's get started. We are going to break down the admissions secrets to the Ivy League in 2 acts today. Act 1 is what I like to call the intro course, the 101 level. It's the important but basic stuff that you need to know. And then Act 2 is the important and advanced stuff, or the 400 level, the things that you're going to get to that no one else is going to know. Now, before we start, I just want to introduce myself real quick. I am Lauren Herskovic, and I am the Chief Operating Officer and what I like to call the Parent Stress Reducer here at Admissionado. I joined the team back in 2011, and my main responsibility is really, or has been, really building the infrastructure, the processes, the tools, everything that our team needs to be able to provide the best support and guidance to our students. And it's really a passion of mine. You know, when I went through this admissions process myself, my biggest regret was applying to 4 schools and getting into all of them. And I know that that sounds like a crazy regret to have, but knowing what I know now, seeing what I see with all these students, really maximizing their potential, I realized that, you know, maybe I didn't. Maybe there were other schools out there that I could have gotten into that may have changed things for me. I do not regret one thing that has happened, and I'm so glad at where I ended up, but you know, I'm so passionate about being part of this process with students, starting this process with everyone tonight, and really helping everybody go down this path and you know, take this journey and ultimately end up at the best possible school they can.
And hello, everyone. My name is Sarge Kassett, and I am the GM here at Admissionado, and really just the head of everything that relates to undergraduate admissions. You know, through my job here, I wear a lot of different hats. One of them being, you know, along with Lauren, of course, I oversee basically every client that comes to the door to a great undergraduate university. Secondly, I recruit our top-notch mentors. And it's actually a very, very crazy, difficult selection process. You know, we like to joke over here. Only about 6% of the people that we interview actually get hired, and that's actually less than a lot of the Ivy League schools. So it's a very, very competitive process. And you know, one of the third things I do is just work on student and parent outreach. Things like we're doing over here, this webinar. You know, we love to get in front of students and parents and just give very relevant and very good and useful material as, you know, these parents and students, just like you, are navigating a very increasingly complex and competitive admissions process. So just a little bit of background on me. After I, you know, finished the first part of my career, I became very, very focused on finding education-related work. You know, I know what college did for me and the places it took me, and I was really, really inspired to spread that same sort of feeling to other people. And so I left my previous job and started meeting with really anybody, honestly, who would talk to me and grab a cup of coffee in the education world. And you know, after all the meetings and the chats and like the coffee shop meetups, you know, Admissionado really just stood out. And you probably think I'm being very biased by saying that because I do work here, but it's honestly true. I did a lot of searching and I talked to a lot of different people, and you know, the passion that just is exuded from this company, from the top level, from the founders all the way down to myself and the mentors and the essay editors and Lauren over here, it's less about the business and it's more about just helping kids reach their potential, really stretch themselves to get into the best schools they can get into. And that's why we're here. And with that, you know, I'm just going to pass it back over to Lauren to get started.
All right, so one thing I just want to point out as we really dive into everything is we are going to have a question and answer session at the end, but if at any point during this seminar you guys have questions, obviously you are all muted. It would be crazy if everybody could unmute and talk at once. So if you look at your GoToWebinar panel, you'll see that there is a questions box. So if at any point a question pops up, something that you think about on the spot, you don't have to wait. Throw them in there, and we will answer everything that we can at the end of the session, and we'll just go through all the questions and go from there. So feel free to leave them at any point. All right, so now you know who Sarish and I are, and I'm sure one of the questions on your mind is, why should you listen to us? Why should you care what we have to say? And I'll tell you why. One, it's because we were born awesome. And, I'm not just talking about Sarish and myself. I'm talking about everyone on this team. Everybody exudes awesome from their pores in a way that I have never seen in any job, anywhere that I've been. It is truly an honor to be on a team with people like this. They're inspiring, they're passionate. These are things that I see internally, within the company, but it's even more important that I see it when they're working with students. But there's obviously more than that. So let's talk about it. First, we're nice folks. You're going to see we're really good at building PowerPoints. We're fun to be around. But the truth of the matter is we enjoy winning more than pretty much anything. Everything that we do around here, every piece of advice we're going to give you today, everything that our mentors do with their students, every process that we build, every person that we hire, we do it all with winning in mind because winning is our goal. So all of our advice is based on the idea of getting to the goal of just being winners in the end. We also try to make a science of a very unscientific process. Anyone who's ever spent any amount of time trying to understand college admissions understands that this is a process that is shrouded in secrecy. It's also very, very, very subjective. So it's really hard to make a science out of it. How do you come up with things, ideas and advice and just processes that are going to help people achieve their goals? And we're very fortunate. We've been around for 9 years. We've done over 26,000 applications, and we've built a lot of data, a lot of history. We've seen a lot of patterns emerge. We've made a lot of observations that make things very, very clear. And that is what allows us to make this process scientific. We can dig into our data. We can see the things that people have done that have worked. We can see the kinds of students that are successful and those that are not. This allows us to really adhere or change our processes, adjust and adapt, and keep up with the trends and just continually move forward in a way that, again, allows us to win. And finally, we're not afraid of controversy. There are going to be things you hear tonight. There's probably things that you've seen on our website that maybe you don't agree with and maybe you're going to push back on. And we're okay with that. We're okay with being controversial because, again, everything that we say, everything that we know, everything that we do is all based on winning. We just really, really like to win. And it's why I don't like to play pool because I never win. So let's really dive in now. As we said, we're going to break this into 2 pieces, and right now we're going to talk about the basics, the admissions crash course. We're going to talk about 4 things here. First is understanding student potential. Second is really digging into who the AdCom is. Who are these people who are determining your fate? Who are they? What are they looking for? And most importantly, how do they look for it in your applications? So let's dive into student potential. I'd like to imagine everybody, and I'd like you to imagine yourself as a rubber band. We are all rubber bands at rest. The important thing to understand is that everyone has an untapped potential. We can all stretch. Some of us can stretch a little bit, someone can stretch a lot, but everybody has the ability to stretch their potential and maximize their potential. The big thing to understand is that we all have room to grow. That is the most important point to take away. Now, of course, everybody's stretchability, which is not a technical term, but it is to us, is different. And it might be for different reasons. Maybe some people have fewer opportunities in front of them. Maybe some people have a higher natural talent in a specific area. Whatever the reason is, people's stretchability is just different. And when it comes to college admissions, the most important thing that you can do, the most beneficial thing that you can do, is to focus on you. Worry about yourself and your potential, how far you can stretch to your potential. If we go back a slide and you look at these 3 students, you're going to see that everybody has a maximum. Student 1, their maximum only goes so far. Student 3, their maximum potential goes a little further. If student 1 tries to stretch in a way to look like student 3, it's not going to work. The rubber band is going to snap. Something is going to break. So that's why it's so important to focus on you and your potential and what you can do to maximize your personal potential. When you focus on your own capacity, you can make better decisions that are going to lead to a more successful outcome than you would if you were obsessing about everyone else. And an example of this is actually a student that we worked with a couple of years back. He was excelling in science. He was amazing, winning science awards. He was really passionate in this one aspect of science, and it was just really what he had dedicated himself to. But his dad had heard about a student a year older than him who had many, many accolades in music, and that student ended up getting into Yale. And so his dad kept pushing him. We have to get you involved in an instrument. We have to get you to play an instrument and to maximize an instrument. And the truth is, if that student had taken his time to try the unrealistic goal of really mastering an instrument in a year, it wasn't the right move. That's not where he should spend his time. He would be spending tons of resources, tons of time, tons of energy on something that just wasn't in the cards for him. He's not a musician, and it's not like he needs to be a musician to get into Yale. He needs to focus on himself, his capacity, his potential, and use that time to really, again, stretch it and to go as far as he can go, to stop comparing himself to others and to just really do what he can do best, because that's what the schools want to see. And when I say schools, obviously, I'm referring to the admissions committee. So let's talk about it. Who are they? Who are the gatekeepers at Harvard and Yale and Columbia, Penn? A lot of us think that they're professors, they're scientists, they're luminaries. When you imagine the person who's going to read your application, this is probably the idea that comes to mind. But guess what? That is literally just a perception. And who knows why we have it? Maybe it's the way that Hollywood presents the admissions committees at these schools. Or maybe we associate the really successful, Nobel Prize winners and successful scientists that graduate from the schools and assume that these are the guys who decide who gets into Harvard and Yale and who doesn't. But this is actually a false perception. Here is what the AdCom is. Here are the people sitting on the AdCom. They're regular people. Regular does not mean less than in any way, but it's important to understand that these are just regular, smart, thoughtful, intelligent, emotional people. A lot of them haven't even gone to the schools on which they sit. Maybe they've been in education for a while, but they're not the people that you're thinking they are. And the reason it's important to understand this is that these people are more regular than you expect them to be. And when you realize that, it takes the pressure off a little bit. When you think about the Nobel laureate who's reading your application, it's going to make you tense up, maybe even put on errors that are not actually helpful. Present yourself in a way using jargon or just listing your achievements or just trying to be someone that maybe you're not. And it's just not helpful. If it were helpful, if presenting yourself in that way was going to benefit you in any way, then I would 100% tell you to go for it. But I'm telling you, it's not going to help. It does not work with these people, the people who are actually reading your application. What does work is different, and that's what Saroj is going to talk to in a bit. We're going to get into all of it, but I just want you to understand, just think about who's reading these applications, and because that's who you are writing for. You're writing for these lovely humans that you see right here. Now, we know who they are, but what are they looking for? One thing we love to do around here, and you're going to see it a lot tonight, is make analogies. So I'm going to make an analogy in honor of wedding season, and let's pretend that you are planning a wedding for this upcoming weekend, and you're trying to decide where to have your outdoor wedding. You're deciding between Atlanta and St. Louis. So one way to figure it out is to look at the weather for the past 4 days. What has the weather been like? Who's going to have, which one are we going to gamble on based on what things have been happening in the past 3 days? Or the past 4 days. So you look back at the weather, and if you just look at what's happened in the past, it looks like St. Louis is clearly the best option. This is the one to take the gamble on. This is the one that is, this is the one worth risking it on, risking a wet, rainy wedding. But of course, if you look ahead and you look at the full 7-day forecast and you can see what it's going to be like, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, what you realize is actually St. Louis is not the choice, at least for people who want beautiful sun-shining pictures. When you actually look ahead and you can see what's coming, it's clear that Atlanta is the choice. Atlanta is where you should have your outdoor wedding. Now, how on earth does wedding planning come back to admissions? Well, luckily for you, I'm going to tell you. When the admissions committee is reviewing applicants, they are not looking at, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. They're not looking at 9th grade, 10th grade, and 11th grade to see who has achieved the most today. This is the biggest mistake that applicants make. They think that in order to get into a top school, it's a contest to see who's gone the furthest until this point, who has done the most things, who has won the most awards. And that's just not what it is. The reason the admissions committee is looking at the past 3 years, the reason it's important that you have all of these things, that you've done all of these things, is because the admissions committee is looking at it to see and to predict who is going to be the most successful in the future, who is going to come to campus and thrive, and who is going to graduate and succeed. And it's a very important distinction. This is not a race to see who got the furthest today. The reason the admissions committee wants to see that is because they are looking at your past experience to predict your future potential. And so as you're writing your applications, as you are strategizing how you are going to present yourself, it's important to remember that. Everything that you say, everything that you write, everything that you do needs to be with the idea in mind that you need that to come through as, I am going to be successful, the most successful, when I get to your school and when I graduate, because that is what they want to see. Schools want you to be successful. It raises their cachet, it makes them look better. Maybe you'll become a billionaire and donate your money back to the school. That is what they want. Now, of course, that leads to the question of how do they measure that? How do they look at everything you did from 9th through 11th grade and use that to predict your future potential? And the truth is, it's two things. It's hunger and it's aptitude. Hunger, of course, is the guy who gets out there. He or she is the one that starts things, builds things, rolls up their sleeves, really gets out there and makes things happen, really engages with the community around them and leaves an impact. And aptitude, of course, is the person who can digest it all, can take it all in, and can actually make these things happen. They're, smart people. The thing to remember is having one and not the other is not enough. The admissions committee really needs to see both. So the guy who's hungry but has no aptitude, he's the guy who's going to get out there and do things and really engage, but the admissions committee isn't sure he has what it takes to actually get to his goals. And on the flip side, there's the guy with the aptitude but with no hunger. This is the student who in high school gets great grades, maybe has great test scores, but nothing else. They're not really engaging in any way. And to the admissions committee, this can come off as lazy. So that's why it's important as they're looking through your application to be able to present both of these things. And I'm going to kick it back to Sarish, who's going to walk you through all the components and really explain how these things play out and how you can present them.
All right, so Sarish here again. I'm going to take over for a bit, and if you take a look at all of the things that are listed here, all of these are just pieces of a great application. The grades, the coursework, the essays, test scores, recommendations. They're all super important and maybe not fully equally weighted when it comes to an actual admissions decision, but they're all very, very important components. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to focus on 4 of these components, the top 4, grades, coursework, extracurriculars, and essays. And that's not to say that those are the most important part of every single admissions decision, but just in the interest of time, again, rather than spending a little bit of time on all these very important topics, we'll probably take the ones that we're not discussing here and do another webinar or have some more material out there for you. But for right now, let's just start with these 4. So first off, let's talk about grades. This is probably one of the things that has you as the student and parents as well the most worried as you traverse high school all the way from 9th to 11th grade. What are my grades? What is my GPA? Now here, let's just have a little example here. You have student A who has this nice little blue backpack on, and you have student B with this brown satchel, and then you have student C who's carrying this pink backpack over here. And I'm going to give you a quick piece of data on all 3 of them. And that data is their cumulative GPA from high school. Now, just looking at this, you see that student A has a 3.8 and student B has a 3.82. You see that student C has a 3.76, and so if you looked at these numbers in isolation, you have a clear winner, right? You see student B has this 3.82, and you're thinking, okay, this guy over here, he's got this satchel, and he's going to get all of the interviews from all the admissions committees, and he's going to get all of the all the best looks from the top schools. Now, when I show you a couple of more pieces of data, this is going to change a little bit. It may not seem totally as clear cut and as dry as it actually seems here with just the numbers. So Look at this, let's look at this graph over here. This is a graph of GPA per year, and so we're going to be able to see how each one of these students' GPAs actually fluctuated year over year. So let's look at first student A, then let's move on and look at student B, and then obviously let's move on and look at student C. So now we have a little bit of more information about something that's actually very, very important. It's trajectory. So if I asked you that exact same question that I asked you on the previous slide, which student do you think has the highest potential and is going to get the best look from these top tier colleges? Is it as easy of an answer as it was before? For me, at least, it isn't, and I don't think it's as easy for an admissions committee either. Based on the trajectory, again, that student C is showing, there's some real hunger there. This guy has really tried hard. This girl actually has tried really, really hard, and she's gotten better and better every year. It's a very interesting quality that student C has that student A and student B don't have. Student A, on the other hand, completely a downward trajectory from year to year, and student B is just really all over the place. And so just based purely on the fact of this interesting quality of student C, it's not just interesting to me, and it's not probably just interesting to you, but it's also interesting to that guy who's sitting on the admissions committee at a Yale or a Harvard or a Penn or Cornell. So if one of us, me, you, this guy, the admissions committee, had to bet on which one of these students is going to be the best performer in the future, that's exactly what these admissions committees guys do, and the conclusion that they're going to draw is that it's unclear. Unlike when we were looking at the GPA completely in isolation, now that we have this extra piece of data, it's honestly just not clear as to which one is the absolute best. There's good and there's bad points for each of these candidates. So the takeaway here is that looking at the full picture, just like admissions committees do, can again make things a little bit less cut and dry. That upwards trajectory, it means something, and that downward trajectory, it also means something. So for those of you that are on this call and maybe getting a little freaked out that you have a bit of a downward trajectory, understand that that's not the worst thing in the world either. There's ways to explain that away. There's extenuating circumstances, but if it can come off as a red flag, and if you don't address that red flag, it can be less. It can be consequential, just as much as student C's upward trajectory is. So again, let me ask you that question: do you know which student out of these three that you would choose for admission? Now, as we continue to move through this presentation, I'm going to peel back the layer even more and talk about coursework. So now let's think about all of the courses that each one of these students took to get to that GPA number that they got to. And again, just like Lauren mentioned, we love to work with analogies here at Admissionato. So here is another analogy. So here we have, you'll see on this slide, we have this girl on the left-hand side, and we have this guy on the right-hand side, and they're going to engage in a little competition. And that competition is going to be a very, very, one of my favorite competitions. It's who can build the most boxes. And that's not really actually my favorite competition. I'm just hoping that you guys will key in here. But we're going to see which one of them can actually build the most boxes. And so we're off. And suddenly we see, we look on the left and we see that the girl on the left has built about 12 boxes, and they're all folded and they're nice and stacked. And the guy on the right has folded about 8. So who's the better stacker? Obviously, if we were to look purely at this data and only look at this data alone, we're going to say automatically that the girl on the left is the better box builder. Again, they had the exact same amount of time, the exact same amount of materials, and here we are, one with 12 and one with 8. But now what if I was to tell you that this guy on the right, let's add a little twist here, he was blindfolded. He's wearing this blast helmet. As I think that's the right Star Wars lingo. If it's not, I really do apologize, because my brother is a huge Star Wars fan, and he would be very, very upset with me right now if I got that name wrong. But either way, the idea here is the same. Now this guy on the right has completely blindfolded himself, and he actually did it before he even started building boxes. So with that information now, knowing that the guy on the right was blindfolded while building these boxes, what's your assessment of these people's box building ability? It could still be the fact that the girl on the left is just still better at building boxes, but now there's a little bit of doubt that's built into this, and again, something that's intriguing. Just like a slide ago when we were talking about the fact that someone had an upward trajectory, and that was interesting to a member on the admissions committee, this person on the right-hand side really challenged himself before he even started, stacking boxes. So again, just like we saw last time, the answer just isn't as cut and dry as it used to be. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that when you're going through the process of choosing the courses you want to take, make a point to take some challenges. Don't just take classes that are going to look good and pad your GPA, because colleges, what they really care about is having people on their campuses that are going to challenge themselves. Now, if you really do believe that taking slightly easier classes, they're going to allow you to get better grades and, i.e., stack more boxes, just be aware that there's another version with another student that's competing with you that may take slightly harder courses, may get slightly worse grades, but just might look more impressive overall. Because you're probably thinking this too, that if this guy on the right was able to stack, 8 boxes without even seeing where the boxing material was, while the person on the left was able to only stack 12, being fully facilitated, being able to see everything, you may actually think that this guy on the right-hand side is a little bit more talented and really willing to take challenges and risks. So let's talk about the takeaways here with all of this. Number one, trajectory matters. Always be consistent or try to have that upward trajectory. One of the things that's really important here is that, freshman year, if you have a low GPA, it's not the worst thing in the world. This upward trajectory can really make up for a lot of, I don't want to say mistakes, but a lot of just, tripping points early in your high school career. And then the number two takeaway is to challenge yourself. Don't just settle, but, keep Lauren's rubber band analogy in mind. Everybody has the potential to stretch. Maybe you can't stretch as much as this guy on the slide and carrying these 2 gigantic tires, but everybody has the ability to take challenges, and so look for them and take them. Another really important point to keep in mind here is that all high schools are different. Not all high schools are going to offer the same amount of AP courses and IB courses. But the fact is that admissions committees know that. And they're going to look at your specific circumstances and make sure that you're challenging yourself as much as you can within those specific circumstances. So even if you're at a school that only offers 1 or 2 AP courses, but you've taken those, and this other school that has 7 or 8 AP courses offered, but you decide to take none of them and only take easy classes to pad your GPA, again, I think this admissions committee member is going to take a second look at the guy that took only 2 AP courses, even opposed to a guy that took 4 when they had the opportunity to take 10. It's really important that you're challenging yourself to the greatest extent that you can. And, don't get me wrong here at all. I think GPA is super important, and I don't want to minimize the value of GPA. But the truth is that, those 2 factors, the trajectory and challenging yourself, that can overwhelm the difference between a 3.9 GPA of somebody you're competing against for the same admission spot and you having a 3.8 GPA. Those 2 things are very, very important. Now let's move along to one of my favorite topics. It's extracurricular activities. So, extracurriculars, and all of you guys probably already know this, but it's all of those things that students do outside of school. It's those things that you do outside of when you're sitting in a classroom and when you're, sitting in front of your teacher and taking notes and everything else that you do while you're sitting at school specifically. The first thing to discuss really about extracurriculars is why should you do extracurriculars at all? Why do they matter? The thing that I think most people make a mistake around is doing extracurriculars because they think that they've shown admissions committee that they're doing so many things that are very impressive and they're going to do as many things as possible. In fact, the way that admissions committees actually deal with extracurriculars is to look to see if there are clues within those extracurriculars that are a forecast for success. Now, we can take that back to the weather analogy that Lauren was making earlier and saying that, okay, so this prospective student has done this type of extracurricular and has been this engaged and this adamant about promoting this extracurricular here in high school. Now, I know that they're going to do the same thing when they get to this college campus of mine, and then after they graduate, they're going to do amazing things in the community. And I want that prestige in the community to reflect really, really well upon my school. And so, again, what do extracurriculars do? They give you a barometer for success. And again, that's what admissions committees care about. How successful are you going to be, not only on campus, but also in the future? So here are 2 questions that we get all the time when we start talking about extracurriculars. What should I be doing outside of school, and how many extracurriculars is the right number of extracurriculars? But what I really alluded to earlier was maybe those aren't actually the right questions. The real question to ask right now is, how should I engage with the extracurriculars that I've chosen to participate in? It's not about should I join the Key Club or join Habitat for Humanity. It's not about should I join the chess club or should I join the AV club. It's not about should I play the flute or should I play soccer instead of playing the flute. If you're doing something that you're genuinely interested in, you're genuinely passionate about, no matter what that thing is, no matter what that extracurricular is, it's going to resonate because you're just so passionate about it. It's just going to jump off the page. It's going to be showing that you're truly engaged in the success of that specific club or organization, whatever it might be. Now, you're not just joining that organization for the sake of joining that organization. It's something you're truly passionate about, and that's important, and it's really reflected by how engaged you are in that activity. And then when you're passionate about something, you're going to show a lot of follow-through. You didn't just join that club. You're going to become an officer of that club. You're a leader. You're going to help it grow to heights that it's never seen before. And the way you're going to do it is by spending a lot of time with it. Or, on the other hand, if that organization or club and something you're passionate about isn't organized and doesn't exist as a formal thing at your school, you're going to turn around and actually create it. Whether it be in your school or in your community, you're going to start from scratch and you're going to make it happen. One of the stories I love to tell when we're talking to students and parents about extracurriculars is one of the students that we dealt with a couple of years ago. And this student, he came from a neighborhood where there weren't very many opportunities to deal with robotics, something that he was very, very just passionate about. He loved taking things apart. He loved putting them back together. He loved seeing how they work. And so he came to us and he said, I think I might just end up playing tennis because that's what's there. And that's what I can, I think I'm okay at it. Maybe I'll just join the tennis team and it's going to be something to put on my college resume. But what we worked with him on was to, again, pursue his passion for robotics in a very creative and interesting way. And so what he ended up doing was he created this club over the summer where once a month he'd go to this middle school and he'd teach middle schoolers about robotics and spread his own passion for robotics to these students. And not only was that, very meaningful for him, but also when he went to go apply to these fantastic universities, these Harvards and these Stanfords and these Yales, he got into every single one of them. Again, he showed passion for robotics. It's something that he was very, very interested in, and he spread that passion to the community. And to kind of follow up on that story, not only did he do that at this middle school, but he also went back to his high school when the summer ended and created his own robotics club. So again, a lot of follow-through, a lot of passion. And it's all about really being deeply involved rather than being involved at a surface level in a lot of different activities, which kind of brings me to my next point, that second question that I alluded to. What is the right number of extracurriculars to be involved in? And what we tell our students over and over again, it's absolutely not about the quantity of extracurriculars. It's all about the quality. If I was sitting on the admissions committee of a Yale or a Harvard, and not just because I think this, the reason I think this is because we've seen this over and over with the hundreds of students we've worked with. These people, they're going to take the student who's shown engagement and follow through on 2 different extracurriculars 100 times over, a person who's only shown follow through to a very limited extent on 10 different extracurriculars. That person that has 2 things he's very passionate about and has really followed up on. Is much more meaningful. It's much more of a barometer for success to that university than that person who has just been very, very surface level involved in a bunch of different things. The guy who's setting up soup kitchens all over the city as opposed to the guy who's just been to one to volunteer. Again, it's the guy who plays sports, he plays tennis, and he's decided I'm going to actually involve myself in competitions outside of school and go to state level rather than the guy who just joined the team for the sake of joining the team. Now, a lot of you probably on this call are a bit younger. You're starting off 9th and 10th grade, and this is a really cool opportunity for you right now to just explore a lot of different opportunities, a lot of different things. I encourage all of you to join a lot of different extracurricular activities. Really get a feel for what really resonates with you, and then choose those 2 or 3 things and truly, truly double down on that, and really go all in on making that your passion. And then, the next year that you're involved, taking it even further. Those are the things that are really going to work and really just make you feel better, not only as a person and as an individual in the community, but it's going to make the people who are judging you at these admissions committees feel a lot better about you and your potential, and that's what's really important. And the last thing I want to talk about here, and it's last on this list, but it's definitely not last in terms of how important they are in your overall extracurricular scheme or your extracurricular themes and your persona, is about being a great member of the community. More and more as the admissions world evolves, the ability to show a university like a Harvard or a Yale that you've been a global citizen, somebody that's been made an impact on the world around you, is becoming more and more important as the years go on. You know, Harvard University itself, they put out this report called Turning the Tide, which they emphasized very, very fully around the fact that the person who is forced to stay at home and take care of their brothers and sisters because there's nothing else to do for their parents besides use the son and daughter to take care of the younger siblings. That type of work is just as meaningful and just as important as the person who has the means to do a very, very cool and extravagant trip to Africa and help underserved communities, or go to Antarctica and do a science experiment. Clearly, those are two very, very different things, but again, according to Harvard and according to all the other schools that Harvard is encouraging to take the same mentality, those two things are very similar. It's all about being active in your community. And when you do that, you're showing that when you move along away from Harvard or away from Yale into the broader community, you're going to continue to make that type of an impact because it's very important to you. Now, finally, the last of these four-ish things that I'm going to be talking about, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about essays. And I here personally, and I think all of us here at Missionado, feel like essays are one of the most important parts of an application overall. It's one of those moments that you have to really express yourself outside of the bounds of the common application and the spaces that you can fill in your GPA and your activities list and everything else. So just starting off with essays, when students and parents approach us, a lot of them approach us just generally for help on applications. A lot of them are most daunted by the college application essay itself. That's the most fear that I see in students is, where do I start? How do I do this? What do I do with this college essay? And it's true, it's not easy. And the fact is, the reason it's not easy is because a lot of you students and a lot of you parents probably have realized this, but students don't get practice writing college-type essays in the span of high school. While you're in high school, you are working on 5-paragraph essays. You're working on research reports. You're working on book reports. But you're not working on the type of writing style that's very important in a college essay. That writing style, it's a very personal, it's a very introspective piece of work. It's almost like writing a blog. And honestly, when is the last time that any of you have taken a blogging class in high school? Probably never, right? It's just something that's not taught. So immediately, right off the bat, you're out of your element, right? The next big hang-up that you get that after being completely out of your element is, what should I write about? There's a lot of different theories around what to write about in your college essay, but the biggest mistake that we have always seen has been that person who takes this college essay as the opportunity to make it into an achievement essay. A lot of these types of students, they see it as their opportunity to completely just show off their most impressive achievements and put it in the strongest light possible. Their academics and their extracurriculars, and just, again, it turns into this long-form resume. It becomes this place where all these activities and all these achievements just end up becoming just another list on your application, which is truly not what it should be. Because, as it turns out, these admissions committees that are actually reviewing these essays, the level of achievement, the impressiveness of it all, it's just not that meaningful. What's really more meaningful is the extent to which the essay actually gives clues about that person's personality, their maturity, their demeanor, and their ability to assemble a bunch of facts about their life and about what they've done in high school into something that's very unique and very different. This person has the ability and has taken the opportunity to seize life in a very interesting way and show it to this admissions committee member in this new light, in this light that they've probably never seen before. And what that does is it gives this admissions committee member a lot of different clues about that student's intellectual ability, which is also a very important thing as this person is making this admissions decision. So if this essay leaves this admissions committee with this emotional response, you'll realize that emotional response, the response that you're eliciting from the person who's reading the essay, is so much more important than the topic of the essay itself. The topic could be anything. It could be anything at all, but if it elicits that same response and that same degree of response, it'll have an even better effect than the best topic in the world that isn't executed well at all. So again, what we like to say here, it's less about what you say and more about how you say it. So when you're going about the process of choosing a topic to write about, don't go about the process of making a list of topics and then choosing what you think is the best. Make a list of the types of emotions that you're able to elicit from these committee members, and choose the types of topics that will fit into those emotions. You'll be able to show that way that you have more sophistication than your typical 17-year-old, which is something that's very, very important. That's what an admissions committee does. They've spent thousands of hours reading thousands of applications, and they've read so many essays at this point that they're very, very well equipped to make the assessment of looking through the actual words in an essay, and looking through to the reader themselves and what these words actually mean about the reader. They actually look through and they'll see sadness, and they'll see tears, and they'll see happiness and true joy, and they'll see a person who's really found out something about themselves. Some real genuine happiness. And in some senses, when you think about it a little bit more deeply, they're actually ignoring some of the words you're actually writing down, and they're focusing more on the way you're actually saying the entire thought around those words. So, I've talked a lot about these emotions you're trying to elicit. But you're probably wondering, what are these emotions? Tell me exactly what these things are supposed to be. And so, when you're trying to think about these types of emotions, you think about a committee member reading your essay and saying, wow, that was truly an interesting perspective. Or reading this essay and saying, wow, what a different, neat point of view. Maybe they say something like, wow, this is something I would not have expected from a 17-year-old. This is a very mature point of view that, if I looked at my 17-year-old son, probably wouldn't have seen the same thing. Or maybe it's something that they learned. They read your essay and it's something about a very unique topic that they just had no idea about, and they walk away thinking that, wow, I just learned something new after reading this essay. Or it can go to the point where, and we've seen this a lot in a couple, I think Lauren's going to touch on one of these, but you read an essay and you're just like, wow, I just really got to meet this kid, because this kid must be so interesting and so amazing that I would just really love to sit down and talk with him. All those things are super important in the overall process of deciding what to write about in your essay. But again, the more important thing than your topic and choosing that first is to really invert that entire process of thinking about how you're going to approach the essay. Don't actually think about the topic first. Think about the type of stories you're able to tell that will elicit specific types of responses that are going to really allow you to connect with your reader. And that connection is going to be what helps you get into that school, by the fact that that person is going to start championing your cause of being the right person for the right fit at that right university. So don't be afraid to try a couple of different things out, and eventually you're gonna strike gold in the right type of topic. And with that, I'm going to pass it right back to Lauren to start on the 401s.
Oh, yes. All right. So obviously, Sarge and I have been talking for a little while, and hopefully you're learning some new things. But we wanted to take it to another level, the same way that we ask our applicants, our clients, the students that we work with, whether it's their extracurriculars or their essays, we want them to always go as far as everyone else goes and then go one step further. That's how you win. We wanted to do that too. We wanted to dig deep into, our deep bowls of knowledge and data and all of these things that we've learned over the years, and really present to you some information that could really, really help and change things for you, but maybe no one has ever really talked about before. So that's where we come to our advanced class, the 401. So we're going to talk a little bit about things like the order of applications, when do you do which, the secret Ivy ingredient, which hopefully has piqued your interest. And then finally, my most favorite topic of all is the importance of risk. And let me tell you, this is coming from the most risk-averse person there is, but this is something that I've seen and I've learned since I got here, and it's such an important thing to consider when you're applying to really, really, really competitive schools. So let's first talk about the order of applications. Now, we always recommend students apply to somewhere between 7 and 10 or 8 and 12 schools. You really want to have a nice mix. You want to cast a wide net, as we like to say. Obviously, some applicants are going to do 20 schools. Some are going to do 15. Some are going to do 5. The first thing I'm going to tell you is the worst thing that you can do is try to do all of your applications at once. Trying to churn out 7, 10, 15 applications simultaneously, it's just not going to lead to your best work, and it's also not going to be efficient because you are going to learn things. You are going to write stories that you can reuse. There's a lot of things that are going to happen at schools 1, 2, and 3 that will carry over as you go and make it an easier process as you move forward. So that's just the first thing to get out of the way. Now, there is something that we have seen, and this honestly is not something that I saw just by looking at the data. It's such a minute, very small difference that it happens based on when you do your applications in which order. But it is actually something that our mentors and our editors have actually noticed while working with their students. So it's worth noting that if you want to give yourself a little extra edge, if you want to go all in and do everything you can possibly do to beat the odds and put out your best work, you should consider the order in which you do your applications. So a lot of people probably think that, if you're graphing out the quality of your applications, it's going to be pretty even keel across the board. And in our experience, it's not always that way. There is a point where the intersection of, your energy levels and the quality of the work meet at just the right moment. So here's how it can look, how we've seen it look in the past. Schools 1 and 2 should be considered a warm-up. As Sarah said, writing essays for college applications is very, very different than any essay you've written before. So there's naturally a learning curve, and that's what you develop, that's what you sort of get over on schools 1 and 2. Then you get to schools 3 and 4, and this is what we like to call the sweet spot. Now you've gotten a little bit of practice, you get it, you've gotten comfortable with this process, your energy level is still really high because you're really early in the process. This is the ideal time, if you want to maximize your chances in every possible angle, this is the time to do those reach schools, those dream schools. If you really want to give yourself, play the game as hard as you can, that's when you should focus on those. And then after that, we call it the solid groove. This is when you get it, you're in it, and you're just churning out the apps, getting through everything. Now, let me just stress that the difference, when we work with our students, the difference between the caliber and the quality of school 1 and school 7, it is not like a giant gaping hole. It's very, very minimal. But again, there is this moment. There's this moment where you get it and you're at your best, best performance. And so if you really want to get into an Ivy League school and you want to double down and you want to go all in, we just recommend doing that school 3rd or 4th. Now, of course, this sort of presents the question of, well, my dream school has early decision. That deadline is November 1st. So obviously that's the first application I'm going to do because that's the earliest one. According to, this graph, I would actually say that should not be your first school. If Columbia is your dream school, don't let that be your first application. Choose a safety school or a mid-range school. Choose something that's not your ultimate dream, numero uno, I'm going to go there no matter what school. Even if, one of your quote-unquote warm-up schools has a deadline of January 1st, even if, your early action school deadline is coming before it, start with one of those other schools. Warm up with those, get comfortable with the process with those, and then move into Columbia maybe 3rd, maybe 4th. The reason this is important, especially right now, is, it's the end of July. And that means that if you know that you need to submit Columbia by November 1st, and you also now know that you need to do 2 other applications before you start Columbia, it's something that you want to lay out. You want to plan out on a smart timeline. So you're giving yourself all the time you need to give the most to all of these applications. Because now you got to do 2 apps before Columbia, and before you do those 2 apps, you have to finalize your school list. So if there's one piece of advice I will give you, it's after we get off this call, maybe it's today, maybe it's tomorrow, start laying out that timeline. Let's figure out the deadlines, figure out the milestones you need to hit, and lay them out so you can follow this graph, and you can make sure that you are literally giving yourself every last opportunity to be successful.
All right, so let's move on to this very cryptic slide right here that says the secret Ivy League ingredient. Now, what is that? Let's talk about it. So all of you, attending this webinar right now, clearly are very, very motivated. You're spending your Wednesday evening with us when it's clearly a pretty beautiful summer night wherever you are in the world. But the fact that you're here lets me know and lets probably everybody else who's on this webinar and Lauren as well know that you're motivated. You're really thinking about getting yourself into the best position to put yourself into an Ivy League school, into one of these top 10 schools, one of the best schools you can get into. Now, here's a hard truth. You should probably know this by now, and you probably do know this by now, but there's 1,000 other students that are out there that are also gunning for Ivy League schools, that are gunning for these top 10 schools, that are very close to, if not just as qualified as you are. You know, they've leveled the playing field with their grades, top grades. They've leveled the playing field with, a bunch of APs and great AP scores. They do a bunch of really great extracurriculars, and their test scores are fantastic. You know, their SATs, their ACTs, their SAT subject tests, they're all very good. And the other thing that we've learned about all these students is that a lot of them come off in their applications as just very much the same. They're the same exact person with the same exact scores, and it's really tough to tell the difference between them. So let's say, for instance, that you're just like these Ivy League applicants, and you have the four exact same things. You have four tables sitting in front of you. Let's say we ask 100 of people just like you, 100 people just like you, to make observations about these four pieces of this set of things, these four tables, and just make some very simple observations about them. What do you think they'd come up with? So I would say that 99% of those people are going to say something to this effect. Okay, they're square tables. They're pretty white. They have four legs. They're decorative potentially, or maybe they can be a desk. And if I put four chairs around them, it's going to be 16 people that can sit down. So that is, the very surface level, very easy to assemble pieces of these four tables. But who is that unique candidate that actually gets a higher level of consideration from an Ivy League school? That person, they see the exact same material that everybody else has, and that they have too, the same four tables. But they're going to take those tables and assemble it in a much different and much cooler way. So they're going to think, what if we took these four tables and we put it into this really cool ping pong table? Now that's interesting, right? This person, this Ivy League student, or Ivy League student prospect, who's very different than the rest of the people, has taken the exact same materials that he has and the rest of those 100 people had. And while the rest of those people just made very simple observations about the four tables in isolation and weren't able to really combine them, this Ivy League prospect really took the time to think about, okay, what's a unique way that I can put these four tables together? And that's important, and that's impressive. So assembling, elements like that in unique ways, they make an admissions committee take notice. And that's, again, a very important thing, that they're taking notice of you specifically amidst the entire flood of applicants to Harvard and Yale and Columbia. You're not just like every other student with that high GPA and that high test score and, the solid extracurriculars, but you take all those same elements and you put them together in a very, very cool way that makes an admissions committee member think, I never thought about it that way. That's really cool and really interesting. And when you elicit that type of response, you can absolutely firmly plant yourself in Ivy League territory. Now, again, this stuff does not get captured in SAT scores and extracurriculars and GPAs, but it's something that really gets captured in essays because, again, the essay, that's your chance to really take everything of your profile and put it into this very compelling and emotional narrative about where you've been and what you want to do in the future and everything about you that, again, will elicit this very emotional response from the reader.
All right, so at last we get to my favorite topic for college applications and not life, considering I was the girl who was afraid to go on a trampoline as a child. It's the importance of risk. And, let's talk about risk for a second, especially when, I think we keep going back to this idea that you are on this webinar, which means you are focusing your efforts on really tough schools. For some, it's the Ivy League. For others, maybe it's a top 10, a top 20, a top 30. Obviously, a lot of the advice we gave here today is focusing on the Ivy League specifically. But everybody's reach school, everybody's dream school is different. And a lot of the things that we're talking about are going to apply no matter where that reach or dream school is. And when you think about it, when you're applying to that caliber of a school, especially, top 10 or Ivy League, everyone else who's applying is going to be excellent. Having strong grades, having strong scores, having a really awesome, profile full of really great opportunities and leadership and all of these things, extracurriculars, that actually doesn't make you exceptional anymore. That makes you normal. that makes you just like everybody else. And you are not going to stand out. You are not going to get in to these schools just by being just like everybody else. And so this idea of risk is even more important when you are targeting these top schools than it is pretty much for anybody else, because your opportunity to stand out is going to hinge on how much you resonate with an admissions committee member. And the best way of guaranteeing that is by taking a risk and forcing yourself to stand out. So let's take a little example here. We've got two students. The first one decides he just wants to be normal. He doesn't want to sound wacky or quirky, or he doesn't want to sound controversial. He does not want to offend. He just wants to go straight down the middle. Number two, the second student says, he wants to take a chance. He wants to make sure that his perspective is heard. He wants people to know about his weird, quirky personality. This is just who he is. So now let's look at these students side by side using, you guessed it, another analogy. We're going to use darts this time. It is a game I am horrible at, but I do enjoy playing, so let's do it. So here's student one, the even kill down the middle guy. Obviously, you see, he's got some pretty consistent shooting. He's, if you consider the bullseye to be, the admit to Harvard, he's circling it. He's very consistent. He's done a good job. People obviously like him. Now let's look at student number two, the guy who was taking risks. Now, this bullseye looks a lot different. Obviously, this kid is not as consistent. He's really all over the place. This looks a lot more like what I look like when I'm playing darts. So you see he's got a couple shots in the white ring. He probably offended some people, maybe in the blue ring. They just didn't really love what he was saying. In the red ring, he got some people on his side. They liked what he was saying. He was fine. But what he's got here is a bullseye. And that bullseye, that little yellow circle in the middle, that's the guy on the AdCom who he is just totally emotionally connected with. This is somebody who, whatever the reaction is, he remembered him, whether it's because he laughed or he cried or he, guffawed, whatever it is, he remembers this guy. And he is the guy who's going to stand up on a table and he is going to fight for him. He is going to advocate for him because he remembers him and he wants him in his school. The other guy, he did fine. I'm sure that, he did a good job, but he never quite got it. Because sure, people liked him, but liking him and thinking he's good is just the same as anyone else who's applying to that school. Again, this is so competitive. You can't just get by on the profile that you have and playing it safe. Your best opportunity is to take a risk. And if you want to hedge your bets, if you want to hedge your risk, the way to do that is not to take the safer route, but it's actually to keep with the risky idea, but just get it in front of more people. Create a riskier app and apply to more schools versus going with a safer application. You need to stand out. You need to be risky. You need to be zany, and you need to be creative, something that is going to be more than the profile that you've built over the course of high school and the great grades that you have. Otherwise, at this school, you were just going to fall in line and you were just going to be another application in the stack. You want to be remembered. My favorite story to tell about an applicant is actually one that worked with us, gosh, it has to be like 4 years ago. And this applicant wrote his entire essay about his beard. Like legitimately the thing that grows out of your face. And you think about it, you're like, how many high school students are going to write an essay about their beard? I mean, how many high school students can grow a beard? But the truth is, this guy wrote this essay. It was very memorable. It was very personal. He was very passionate about it. It's obviously a risky topic. Most people are not going to write an essay about facial hair. But it worked. He got in everywhere he applied. And even more, 4 years later, after reading hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of essays at this company, I still remember the beard essay. That is a good risk. And maybe at a couple schools, people didn't get it. I'm sure that's possible. But the ones who did fought hard for him, and that is why he ultimately got in. So, I understand the desire to play it safe when something this important is on the line, but just try to fight that urge a little bit and see where it can get you. And with that, we are done. So we ran a little bit over, so we're only going to take 1 or 2 questions. Feel free to keep them coming. And if we don't get to them here, we can definitely shoot you an email, or you can shoot us an email, ask the questions. You can tweet at us, of course, but if you've got specific questions, you can always email us at info@admissionato.com. Sarge and I will both be on that. We can respond pretty quickly. So for right now, let's just get to the two of these questions. So the first question is, how many schools is the ideal number of schools to apply for? It's a great question. It's one that we get all the time. And I would say, on average, especially if you're going to be taking risks, of course, you want to cast a wide net, and you want to make sure that you are giving yourself the best chance possible, which means, of course, number of schools, but also what kind of schools you're targeting. It's very important, obviously, like we talked about with the rubber bands, that you stretch your potential and that you aim high. I truly believe if you are doing this process right, you will probably see a rejection or two, because that means that you're reaching high, you're aiming high. So you want to do a mix of reach schools, some mid-range schools, some safer options. Like I said before, we recommend 8 to 10, I think is a good number. Some people can do more. Some people will say, well, I'm going to do 20. And I will tell you this, if you can do 20 high-quality A+ applications, then do it. But if getting to 20 means that you're rushing through them and you're not doing your best work, you're much better scaling back and maybe doing 12 or 15, whatever that number is that allows you to really, truly do your best work. You are better off submitting A+ applications and doing fewer of them than submitting B+ applications just to get more in, if that makes sense. Another question is in terms of test scores. So again, I'm sorry, we didn't talk about test scores today because there's not a whole lot to talk about. But this person is asking, how many times should I take the SAT? And I'll be honest, I think if we go back to that rubber band thing again, the rubber band example. Another student I was going to talk about was a student who was laser focused on getting into UPenn. This is someone who, this was his dream, and he had read somewhere that, he needed a 33 to get in. And so now he was dead set on getting this 33. But every time he took the test, he'd taken it 2 or 3 times at this point, and also all those practice tests, he was pretty much maxing out at a 30. And, he could have dedicated his entire summer before senior year to taking the test prep again, studying again, focusing his entire summer on that. But we really encouraged him not to, because when it comes to your scores, there comes a point where you get your score good enough and it's not going to move the needle anymore. Obviously SAT scores are really, really, really important. ACT scores the same. But there comes a point where you hit a level where, getting an extra 10 points on the SAT or an extra point up on the ACT, in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to make the difference. The one thing you are never going to hear in a room full of admissions committee members is, oh man, who should we choose, the guy with the 31 or the 32? That is never going to be the deciding factor. So if you have the opportunity to take the test again to boost your score by a point, which may or may not happen, or you can use that time to do something that's going to actually make a difference and move the needle, like work on your essays or devote yourself to this extracurricular activity, you should 100% focus on those other things. Get your score to the point, get it to like the highest level you can get it, and then just stop. Because getting a perfect score or achieving this number that you have in your head, it's not going to be the end-all be-all decision maker in this process. Again, especially at this level where everybody is scoring well. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for questions right now. But again, please shoot us a message, shoot us an email, send us a message on Facebook. We are everywhere. I think we're even on Pinterest.
We are on Pinterest.
So if you want to pin something to our board, I don't really know how to use Pinterest, but feel free. And we're around, so we will be getting back in touch with all of you. We can send out these slides in case it's helpful, and we hope you learned something tonight. And we look forward to, again, being a part of this journey with you and helping you get into the best possible school you can get into. So thank you for coming, and enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you very much.